Bulletcast for life.
Welcome everybody to another edition of Under the Radar. My name is Brandon, and on today's episode we will go over the NXT TV results, the Mae Young results, Total Divas, just like we did last week, but we have some breaking news that happened this morning over on the West Coast in Japan for Dragon Gate, PAC, or Neville, whichever way you would like to call him, but officially he is going to be known as PAC now that he is not with WWE anymore, has made his wrestling return. It has been over almost a year. We have not seen him almost practically at all. I haven't seen any pictures of him or any type of media appearances or anything since October of last year, which is crazy to think of how long he's been gone. And there's been rumors speculating like, oh, maybe he's going to come back to WWE, maybe he's going to just jump ship, maybe he's going to be gone by the end of 2017. There was, of course, rumors that maybe he was going to show up at All In, and when the lights went out in the Kenny Omega match, maybe there's a chance it was going to be PAC. But no, he has waited to come back and make a name for himself again on the indie scene in the place that made his name to begin with over in Dragon Gate. That's where he did a lot of his time, made a lot of money, did a lot of things. I have not a big fan of Dragon Gate. I think this might even be the first time we've talked about Dragon Gate at all on any of the Bulletcast shows. So I've seen GIFs and some other things of what he's been doing. I don't know if there's any videos out there. I don't exactly know how Dragon Gate works. I think it's kind of like a TV taping type thing for them. So there's been GIFs floating around, or GIFs, however you like to call it. I call them GIFs because if you spell gift if you put a T at the end, if you just take the T away, then it would be GIF, right? Not GIF, but I digress. It's going to be exciting to see what PAC does on the indie scene. Does he stay with Dragon Gate? Does he go to other indies? Does he go to an ROH? Or does he do kind of like what he did his first run? He kind of goes PWG, he goes around on the other indies. Maybe he goes to New Japan. He was in the Best of Super Juniors tournament before he went to WWE, I believe. So it's going to be interesting to see what PAC is doing. He has a lot of hype around him, even though he's been gone for about a year. He's great. Looks like he's in great shape, just like what he was in WWE. Looks jacked. He could be, I guess you can pass him off as a heavyweight if you really want to, but he's just so short that I think being in a junior division or just, being a regular indie wrestler, I think is going to work perfectly fine for him. I'm excited to see what he does. I was not an indie wrestling fan back in his first go around, so it's going to be fun to see him work all over the place. I would love for him to go to New Japan. Unfortunately, with Hiromu Takahashi gone, that's one person down that PAC can't wrestle, but we all want Takahashi to get better. And there's just so many great names out there that I'd love to see him wrestle. I mean, just off the top, you got Marty Scurll. You can Will Ospreay. I mean, PAC and Ospreay going at it would be phenomenal, and that match is probably going to happen eventually. Where and when? Who knows? I mean, there's just so many big names out there in the indie scene. The thing is, WWE's maybe starting to sweep them up a little bit, so maybe some of those names are gone. Do we see PAC on an episode of Being the Elite? Do the Young Bucks and Cody and Kenny run into him? Rather, maybe in Japan, maybe in the States, they do an indie show together. It's going to be fun to see what PAC does. So, let's jump on into this NXT TV report. And we start off with William Regal coming out to the ring, and Undisputed Era come out and they kind of complain about what's been going on about the War Raiders and Ricochet dodging Adam Cole for his automatic rematch. And William Regal didn't take any shit. He laid down the law and said that there will be a match between Adam Cole and Ricochet coming up soon, and the Undisputed Era will defend against the War Raiders in 3 weeks. So what's going to happen is there's going to be a triple threat match involving Pete Dunne and Adam Cole and Ricochet, I believe, if I'm remembering this correctly. I actually watched this on Thursday, So I'm a little bit ahead of the game, and not just cramming it in right before I record this podcast. And so in 2 weeks, Cole will get a rematch in a triple threat match with Pete Dunne and Ricochet for the North American Championship. And then the Undisputed Era will take on the War Raiders in 3 weeks for the championships. And Undisputed Era freaked out. Obviously, they did not like that decision from William Regal. I think William Regal is the best commissioner, authority figure in wrestling. I think it's definitely what wrestling needs. We've had so long with heel authority figures. It's such an easy story to tell, having heel authority figures, but we've seen it so much that having a babyface out there, just being a straight man, laying the law down, and the babyface can be hard on both heels and babyfaces. Just having he's not even technically a babyface commissioner. Yes, people love him, but he's just straight laced, plays it right down the middle, doesn't take any crap from no one, and that's why I love William Regal so much. And I would love it for him to be on the WWE roster and as an authority figure, but it is what it is. I'll take on NXT, so I'll get whatever I can with that. Johnny Gargano was seen earlier in the day, and he was talking to a roving reporter. He was excited about his match against Tony Nese next week. He says that he apologized for what's been going on recently with his behavior. He talked about taking some time off, and now he's regrouped. He's back and ready to go. Tired of sad sack Johnny. So they plugged next week, blah blah blah, and then they were almost going to go away, but then Candice LeRae met up with Johnny Gargano right at the end, and then Lacey Evans was talking trash to Candice. So kind of something that NXT does, kind of where they show one thing, but then the ultimate goal was to lead this to another thing. What happened was Lacey Evans and Candice LeRae got into a little bit of a confrontation in the parking lot, which is obviously going to set up a match later down the line. Lacey Evans versus Candice LeRae. It's a little interesting matchup. Gargano getting involved. Is he going to be by Candice's side, or is it just going to be a straight up woman versus woman thing? It's going to be interesting to see what they do in this. Lacey Evans, I've kind of talked about. She kind of goes up the ladder a little bit, and then she loses. So is this going to be Lacey Evans getting a big win over LeRae for her to possibly face Kyrie for the Women's Championship? Or is this going to be Candice elevating herself over Lacey Evans to possibly go babyface, or Shayna Baszler gets it back, or maybe they do something else. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do in the coming weeks with these two women and the feud. So next up, a little video package on Lars Sullivan, just quick and simple. Backstage, Velveteen Dream was posing for a photo shoot, and Kathy Kelly asked for an interview. He ignored her at first, and then Kathy Kelly kind of asked some questions, and then he came back, and he insinuated that Tomasso Ciampa was the one that insinuated Aleister Black, and Kathy Kelly asked for a follow-up, some clarification, and Dream said that he is not a snitch. The writing is on the wall, and he told Kathy to do her job. So they are obviously putting a lot of the blame or the insinuation on Tomasso Ciampa at the moment right now. Are they going to do the old bait and switch, and it's going to be somebody else completely? Probably, but as of this moment, Tomasso Ciampa does seem like the most obvious pick since he's a dastardly heel. And he said that if he did it, he was going to do it, but somebody beat him to the punch. So Ciampa has already denied these claims. I haven't heard anything about Aleister Black. Are we gonna get we haven't really got an update on him in terms of when he's gonna come back. No real evidence, but we have some more evidence coming up very soon in the show. We have Lars Sullivan going up against a jobber, and of course Lars Sullivan wins in 1 minute and 15 seconds, and this is after an attack by EC3, so Lars Sullivan wins by disqualification. So just setting up this match between EC3 and Sullivan, just good, solid booking. We haven't seen EC3 in a while after Sullivan laid him out, and EC3 rather, showing some good fire, and I thought this was a good little segment to bring back EC3, kind of getting a little bit of heat back, and gonna be interesting to see what they do between these two, since EC3 already has a loss under his belt. Lars Sullivan lost to Aleister Black, so both of these guys need a win to get back on track and go to that next level. So what is going to happen? You never know. Backstage, William Regal was being interviewed in the hallway. He said that he's narrowed things down because in the opening, he was originally going to talk about the Aleister Black situation, but he got derailed by Undisputed Era. So the interviewer asked him if he's narrowed things down in the investigation, and there was a banging noise coming from inside the room, and it ended up being Nikki Cross. And she said that she wanted to play with Bianca Belair again, and she was acting all her crazy way. And she said that she knows who did it. Or she said she knows. I don't know the exact wording of what she said. But I don't know what they're doing with Nikki. I thought she was like really over when she faced Shayna Baszler. I think they're just going maybe a little bit too far in that whole crazy, kooky direction. Is it her playing it too much, or is it the direction she's getting? I think that they had something with Nikki, and I think now they're just kind of playing it for laughs and just not taking her as seriously as I think she should be taken seriously. Like, she's crazy, but it's like a funny crazy. It's not like an intense, I'm scared because she's going to do something crazy. So they did drop that hint that Nikki knows. The interviewer asked Regal what does he think about that, and he didn't really know what to make of it because obviously Nikki just says things, and sometimes it makes sometimes it makes sense, but most of the time it doesn't. Next up, we have the Street Profits against the Mighty. Nick Miller and Shane Thorne came out with the Street Profits chains and Montez Ford's cup. The Street Profits came out all business, wasn't showboating to the crowd. Good intensity from these guys. In the end, the Mighty win in 7 minutes and 40 seconds. The match, it was okay, but I mean, I've already said it. Like, the Street Profits are great with their charisma and getting over with the crowd, and they have a great character. But when it comes to in the ring, I just don't know if they really have it to take themselves to that next level. Montez Ford, I think, is great on his own. Angelo Dawkins has been one of those guys down in NXT who's kind of been toiling and had so many different tag team partners, and maybe he's just not fit to be a star in wrestling. Maybe he can just kind of be a big man, lower card job guy, but just telling, they forward the story with the Mighty and the Street Profits, so obviously I think more things are going to be going on down the line with this. The Mighty are good, but they just haven't really had that much of a storyline reason to really get invested. So, I mean, ever since they turned heel, they're really good. They're good wrestlers, but they just haven't really connected or really had that moment to show the very best of what they do. If they can even do better than this. So the next match up, we had Kairi Sane going up against Vanessa Bourne, and Kairi wins in 3 minutes, straightforward. Shayna Baszler comes out, talks a little bit, and one thing is Shayna did like more pirate puns when talking to Kairi, which I'm not a big fan of. Like, Kairi's character already is a little too simplistic, and she hits the pirate note a little too much, and then when the opponents talk about the pirate stuff, it gets a little bit overbearing. Like in the Mae Young Classic, it was cute, it was kind of funny, but now it's kind of like Nikki Cross, where she has her gimmick, and they've just kind of beaten you over the head with it so much that it kind of loses its luster, and it's kind of annoying. But Kairi comes back in her broken English and says that she's going to beat her again. Straightforward, they make an announcement that the two will have their rematch at the Evolution pay-per-view. So will this match be the best match of the show? Maybe, possibly, if it gets the time, if they do everything that they can do. Just coming off the top, I mean, with the rumored Ronda-Nikki match, that's probably not going to be a show stealer. If Charlotte and Becky go at it again, and that's like the real blow-off, I think that can be a whole lot of fun. So probably Charlotte and Becky, and this Kairi and Shayna Baszler match is probably going to be in contention for the top 2 matches on the show. Another earlier today segment with Keith Lee. Keith Lee kind of talked about backstage about him being 2-0 and he's limitless and he wants to get a championship. He goes through a door and like some photo shoot or whatever area, and Kona Reeves was there getting his hair done. And they set up a little challenge. Kona talking trash to Keith Lee. Keith Lee, putting himself over. And it looks like that's what we're heading with in the either next week or in the coming weeks, with Kona Reeves taking on Keith Lee. I'm not mad at it. Just something Keith Lee to do while hopefully he gets a big takeover match down the line. Like, that's the thing. It's only the beginning of October, and we still have a month and a half until the next takeover special. So they've been setting up big matches. As I already said, we have the 2 title matches that have been set up within 2 weeks and 3 weeks. So with Keith Lee facing Kona Reeves in this little feud going on right now, I'm not mad at it. Just Keith Lee just kind of working his way up the totem pole. In the main event, we had Otis Dozovic going up against Tomasso Ciampa in a non-title match. This match was a whole lot of fun. 9 minutes and 37 seconds. It wasn't like a great match by any means. You know, the crowd was definitely into it. Otis isn't the greatest worker in the world. Tomasso Ciampa did his best to kind of carry him. The crowd was into it. Like, they love Otis. And, I mean, was it the best match in the world? Is Otis, going to be a superstar singles guy? No. If they ever break up and he becomes a single star, I don't see any big plans for him. But it is what it is. He has good charisma, and Tomasso Ciampa barely sneaks out. He hits 2 draping DDTs, one on the outside and one on the inside for the victory. So they really played up that Otis had Ciampa on the ropes, but Ciampa was just able to scurry away. And that is how the show went off the air. Good episode, wasn't the best. They have, a long time till Evolution and War Games, which is what some of these matches are building towards. So, I believe I don't know when the next TV tapings are, so those TV tapings are definitely going to be the ones where there's going to be a lot of hype and build for the War Games takeover. So, on to the Mae Young Classic, the last batch of matches in the first round, and we have Hiroyo Matsumoto defeating Rachel Evers in the first round. Just a good match. I mean, it is what it is. Hiroyo Matsumoto, just a good Japanese wrestler, good intensity. Don't really know what else to say here. We have another match. Tanara Conti defeating Jessie Elban. And Conti, we've seen her before. She's the Brazilian judo wrestler, I guess. We've seen her in NXT. She was in the first Mae Young Classic. She's a good-looking girl. She has athletic ability. Not the best wrestler in the world. So, I don't think Conti is destined for really big things unless she gets much better in the ring. Maybe she's one of those wrestlers, unfortunately, that she's gonna get promoted or have some success because she has the Brazilian background. She's a pretty girl. She faces Lacey Lane in the next round, so I'm pretty sure Lacey's gonna get that victory. But you never know. Maybe they want to be big over in Brazil. Next up, Nicole Matthews defeated Isla Dawn. Just another good match. I mean, these matches, they were fine for what they were. They weren't anything special. The big match was definitely Io Shirai going up against Zaya Brookside. Anyways, Robbie Brookside's daughter. Only 19 years old. Robbie was at ringside, and apparently this was the first time he's ever seen his daughter wrestle. So he was very emotional, and obviously Io Shirai, one of the big names coming into the Mae Young Classic, big name over in Japan, very similar to Kairi Sane and Asuka. And this was a practical squash match, to be honest. Brookside got a little bit of offense in, but this definitely was here to show Shirai and show her intensity. She did like a double knees into the corner. It looked just brutal. She was just this was Japanese strong style right here. And I know Io Shirai is one of the favorites to go very far in this tournament, so I can see why she was someone who has never seen her work before. She was very impressive. And Zaya Brookside, she didn't really have a whole lot to shine, but she's only 19. She has a good look. She's very young in this business, so she has a future here. She's a little bit undersized, so maybe that might work out against her. She's kind of even smaller than Alexa Bliss, I would say. Maybe Alexa Bliss is smaller, but at least Alexa Bliss is a little thicker. I would say Brookside is kind of skinny and short, so that might work out against her a little bit. But so the next show is going to be the first matches in the round of 16, so progressively these matches are supposed to be getting better and better, so it's going to be exciting to see what is going on in the round of 16. So last up we have the Total Divas review. We talked last week. We're continuing on from WrestleMania 34. More backstage footage. Paige, unfortunately, has to retire, and this was emotional. It wasn't as emotional as I would say Daniel Bryan's. I know Daniel Bryan had his little episode on Total Bellas or Total Divas where he had to retire. Paige had the same thing. I didn't feel like it was as emotional. Maybe just because I love Daniel Bryan much more than Paige, but it kind of brought me back, and it was like a little sad seeing Paige having to do that all over again. Because and you have to think, she's only like 26 years old, so at least Daniel Bryan was in his mid-30s when he did it. He had pretty much a full career. If he would have called it quits, he was one of the best wrestlers of his generation. Paige, she's only 26. Yes, she had a long career in the UK and on the indie scene with her family, but Paige just really maybe wasn't coming into her own, but she was definitely one of the veterans and one of the bigger names in wrestling for the women's division. And just sad that she has to unfortunately retire. Neck issues just aren't anything to mess with, especially when, you don't know. It takes one bad bump or one bad thing and you can't walk, or you might not even live again. So Paige, definitely, I don't want her to come back if she's not ready to, or if she's not cleared, because I don't want the wrestlers to push them like that. Natty, we talked about, was a little honorary towards Tyson Kidd in the last episode, because apparently Natty felt like Tyson wasn't giving her enough support or being behind her enough. As you know, Tyson Kidd is now a agent or a producer backstage, and so he has to do a whole bunch of different things, especially for WrestleMania, and Natty just didn't feel like she was being loved enough by Tyson. And in the end, after the match, they put up they showed the women's battle royal, and then in the end, Naomi won. And then it did kind of make sense why Naomi won, because I remember at the time we were like, oh, why didn't Bayley win? That was like the most over Bayley's been like since she came into the company, was during that match. And then they have Naomi win at the very last second. And of course it's because they want that footage for Total Divas, and having Naomi come back and have this little monologue during Total Divas about women's revolution and all that other stuff. It made sense, even though I do not agree with the choice to have Naomi win. It is what it is. So we also talked about last week where Natty had some she was trying to promote Birdie B, which is the Bella Twins' clothing line. In this episode, the Bella Twins try to make up for it by having brunch with like 10 fans that Natty promised the Bella Twins would do things or whatever. This was definitely like one of the most scripted things I've seen on this show. Like, why was just, if Natty went up to all these different people that probably went up there, how were they even able to contact the 10 people? Because when you sign those non-disclosure agreements, you don't give them your phone number. You just print your name and sign it. So I don't know how the Bella Twins were able to get in contact with all those people, and they like happen to be like women, and I'm trying not to stereotype, but they were like women and they were gay men, and they just weren't like your stereotypical wrestling fans where, when I said favors, maybe that's what I don't know. It was kind of weird. Just Bella Twins sat down and had brunch with like these 10 people, and it looked like a work, to be honest. So that's gonna do it for me for today. A pretty short podcast. I got some things going on for school and some other assignments I got to take care of. So I was able to squeeze this in on a Tuesday afternoon over here in the Bay Area. Have not seen Fighting Spirit Unleashed. I have seen some spoilers, so I'm hoping that I can maybe squeeze it in and watch it before the Bullet Cast on Friday, but definitely I will watch it over the weekend, and I can bring to you some sort of analysis, maybe not go super in-depth since it's going to be a little dated by next Tuesday, but I also didn't want to really get into it. I know it's not spoilers technically because the show already happened, but it's not going to be aired until Friday on Access, so I want to give a little bit of time for people who aren't New Japan subscribers to have an opportunity to watch that without spoilers, especially if you've waited this long, or Tuesday, it's kind of hard to avoid at least one pretty major spoiler. That was kind of all in my face a couple times. So thank you guys very much for listening. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, email us questions, DM us questions, however you feel suit. The email is bulletcast2sweet, that is the number 2sweet at gmail.com. Once again, bulletcast2sweet at gmail.com. Ask us anything. I said in the last episode, it doesn't even have to be wrestling related. If you want to ask us about sports, music, movies, anything at all. I might not even know what the hell you're talking about, but I'm going to talk on my ass and give you some sort of sufficient answer. So, once again, thank you all very much for listening. Goodbye and good night. Ben.